Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Now this video is probably going to be a little bit chatty because I thought that I would sit down and chat with you about some of the books that are on my current wish list. As you know, this year I have a focus of reading all of my unread books, which means that I'm not on a book buying ban, but I'm trying to really not buy as many new books as I have done previously. So that means my wish list has grown. It is now of 34 books, and I thought that it would be kind of fun to talk about them and let you know why they're on the list, what they're all about, and why I'm curious to read them. You can all find my wish list on my Goodreads account, which I have right here on my iPad. So the books on my wish list are books that I really want to own. I am a book collector and I know that I want to read these novels and also own them. But there is also a list on my Goodreads account, which is books I want to read, which are more books that I obviously would like to read, but that I can get from the library or borrow from a friend. I don't have to own these books, but the books I'm going to talk about today are books that I desire and that I really want to read and own. So I have my iPad with me and I have opened up my list, so let's just get started. First book on the list is My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier. I want this specific edition. I have only one other of these editions of hers, which I think are so gorgeous, and this edition has been out of print for some time, but now it has come back in print, so I'm eager to actually go out and buy it, but I'm holding off a little bit because I just want to diminish my TBR pile a little bit more. Next book is actually a book that I don't have to own, but the story in itself sounds super intriguing, and that is Spinster: Making a Life of One's Own by Kate Bullock. So this is a non-fiction piece of work. It's about a spinster, and it's about being a spinster and making life work anyway. So as you know, I am single and I am about to turn 30 years old. So I thought that it would be so much fun to read this book and see if I agree with her. Next we have Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi, which I'm sure a lot of you have already heard about. It's a very strong piece of work, I've heard, about racism in America, if I'm not mistaken. It's a very short book. It's about 150 pages, and I just really want to read it. The Cause of Love by Alan de Botton, which I actually bought a year ago, but I just never received it. And of course I contacted the seller and they apologized and paid me back. And then since then I haven't been able to, or have been able, but I just haven't bought it again. So that one I really want to read. Then we have The Victorian Chaise Longue by Margarita Lasky in the Persephone Classic edition. This one I was recommended through Eric from Lonesome Reader. He said that it was a really good piece of work. He adored it, so I also kind of want to read it. When I say kind of, it's because these books are a little bit expensive, and I found out that this specific book is only about 100 pages long. So I still have to figure out with myself whether I want to spend the money on it or not. The next book I was also recommended through Eric, and that is A Book of American Martyrs by Joyce Carol Oates, which is the newest release of Oates, who is a phenomenal author in my opinion. I really like her, and of course I want to read her most recent novel at some point. Okay, so now we move on to some books that are on the top of my list, at least the next three. First we have The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead, and it's about this hidden slavery movement back in the times in the USA. I just heard phenomenal things about this novel. I've also heard vague reviews of it recently, but I still want to read it. I still want to own it. I think it's going to be an impactful piece of fiction, and that's why I want to read it. And then we have a young adult duology. I like reading young adult now and then, and this specific duology I've had my eyes on for the past months, and that is the Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo. We have Six of Crows and also Crooked Kingdom, and the reason why I also want to own this duology, even though I haven't read it yet, is because of the beautiful packaging. meaning the pages are black and red, and I also really like the covers, so they have to be part of my book collection, and then hopefully I will also actually love the story. So the next one is What Alice Forgot by Liane Moriarty. I really like Liane Moriarty. She has written some books that I really adored, so I want to dive even more into her authorship, and this is the next book on my list. So yeah, let me know if it's good. I don't really know where to start or where to finish with her, but I have heard good things about this specific novel. I also have on my list Everything is Illuminated and Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close by Jonathan Safran Foer in this bind-up edition. It has to be this specific edition. I have previously read Here I Am by Foer, and I loved that novel. I actually read it recently and it became one of my favorites of that month. So of course I want to read more by him, and I want to own this specific edition. You know what it is like when you are a book collector. Some beautiful books you just have to own. I also have another novel by Oates, and that is The Man Without a Shadow, which I read about when I put it on my wish list, and it sounded so interesting, but I must admit, right now I can't seem to forget what it's about. Let me just try and find out. It's set in 1965, and it's about an amnesiac in history, an infection that clouds his memory, maybe? I must admit, I don't remember this synopsis reading about it now, but I'm sure it's going to be a good book after all, so it's on my list. Another book on my list is Under the Udala Trees by Chinelo Okparanda. This book has received quite a lot of good reviews, and I just really want to read it. That's why I'm sitting here talking about it. I mean, it's one of those books that a lot of people talk about, and it's about history, and it's about oppressive conditions of people, and I just really love to read those stories because they educate me, and this one in specific just is a book that I need to own and I need to read. Okay, the next one is a book I'm so excited about. It's on the top of my wish list, I have to say, and that is The Unseen World by Liz Moore, which is about a daughter and her father, and there is something going on in their relationship. I think that maybe the father has Alzheimer's, if I'm not mistaken, but of course I haven't read it yet, so I can't say for sure. This one has received so many amazing reviews, it's ridiculous. I yet have to hear one bad review about the story. People keep raving about it, and I have been infected. I need to read it now, and I need to own it, and I really want the hardback edition, just because I prefer to collect hardbacks, even though paperbacks are actually easier to read. Then we have Die Urolig by Lynn Ullman. How would you translate that? The Warriors, maybe? I don't know. I'm not sure. That's a tricky one. The Warriors, that's my best guess. I have heard good things about this one from a friend of mine. And also it comes with a pretty minimalistic but really cute cover, I think, so it's on my list. I can't tell you anything about it, unfortunately, but I do know that when I put it on my wish list, I of course read about it and I felt intrigued to read it. Then we have another young adult novel, and that is This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab, which is the first book in the Monsters of Verity series. Victoria Schwab is kind of a hit or miss author for me. I love some of her books, for instance Vicious, but I also really disliked others of her books. So I am intrigued to read this one and see if it's good. It's the first one in the series, so I plan on just buying that first book and reading it, and then of course if I like it I will continue buying and reading this series. Next is The People in the Trees by Hanya Yanagihara. I read A Little Life some years ago and I adored it, so of course I want to read more by this author, and this is her first novel, I believe, and it's been getting good reviews as well. Not that it matters, because I would read it anyway. I read A Little Life and fell in love with it, and when that happens I need to read more books by that author. I'm looking at something right now, a scenery which is kind of fascinating. It reminds me of the movie American Beauty, in which we have some leaves that are flying around in the wind. That's exactly what I'm looking at right now. Let's see if I can catch it on camera. you can't see anything basically, but right here we have some leaves that keep flying up in the wind, and it looks so beautiful. It reminds me of that movie so much. Okay, so back to the list. Next we have Heft by Liz Moore. Now Liz Moore was the author of The Unseen World, which of course I'm going to read first, but I have a feeling I'm going to love it, and if that's the case, then Heft is another novel of hers which I would like to read. Then we have Dragon Springs Road by Jenny Chang. I read some years ago Three Souls by this author, and it was one of the best books of that year. So I haven't read anything else by her, unfortunately, since then. But this one is going to be my next read. I think it's the most recent book of hers, and it sounded interesting when I read about it back in the days. It sounds really horrible that I can't remember the stories, but of course I have read about these books, that's why they are on my list. Another Brooklyn by Jacqueline Woodson, which I've heard about on various channels, and it's set in Brooklyn, and for some reason that's enough for me. I love stories set in Brooklyn. I would love to live in Brooklyn. I would love to even visit it. When I went to New York some years ago, I never went to Brooklyn because I didn't know too much about it, and I didn't have time for it, maybe. I don't know, but since then I have regretted that because I need to live and be in Brooklyn. So that's the reason why this book is on my list. Next we have East of Eden by John Steinbeck, which I have read and loved, but I don't own a copy and I need to. So actually I could just buy myself this copy and have it on my shelves by tomorrow. I might do that actually. It's on my list just so that I remember to do so. Then we have two books by, I think he's a Swedish author. He's called Fredrik Backman, and the two books are Britt Marie Was Here, as well as My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry. Now I have read The Man Called Ove by him some years ago, and it was funny, it was quirky, but I liked it, and it seems like a lot of people have dived into even more into his books and read these two novels, which are on my list, and loved them as well. So I want to read these books in case I'm in the mood for a quirky story, which I am oftentimes. Then we have another book that is high on my list, and that is The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. Now, I admit, I want to own this book mostly because of its cover. It is so stunning. I love this so much. I need to own it, I need to feel it, and I need to be able to look at it every day if I want to. But the story in itself sounds interesting as well. I think it's a retelling of a fairy tale, which is enough for me. Maybe I'm completely wrong. I might be getting all of the synopsises I'm talking about here wrong, but I think that's what it's all about, and that's enough. I'm intrigued. Then we have 1,000 Flaws by Catherine Magee. It might be called something else in English because I'm sitting here with a Danish title. I was recommended this book by several friends of mine who have read it and loved it, and they said to me, Helene, you have to read this book. It is really good. They tell me that it's kind of a combination of Gossip Girl together with dystopia. And it's this dystopian world in which the buildings are super high, and that's all I know. But if they say I'm going to like it, I think I will. Okay, another book that is very high on my list is The Trouble with Goats and Sheep by Joanna Cannon. Now this cover looks really quirky but also really stunning. I want that blue color on my shelves. But the story in itself sounds super intriguing to me. It's about family life, I believe. I actually heard about it through Mercedes' channel the other day, and still I've forgotten most of the synopsis now. That's really bad, but definitely I want to read this book for various reasons, amongst others the content and the cover, which I really like that goat on the cover. This is going to be a really long video. I apologize in advance, but I am nearing the end. Next we have Do Not Say We Have Nothing by Madeleine Thiem. How do you say her name? I don't know. This one I remember next to nothing about, so let's just say that I put it on the list because I heard about it through some videos and some good reviews, and that's enough for me. That goes for the next book as well, which is Memoirs of a Polar Bear. by Yoko Tawata, who is Japanese, I think. This story is told from the perspective of a polar bear, and of course I have to read it. I mean, come on, I really have to read this one. I also have on my list Stay With Me by Ayobami Adebayo, which I can't remember too much about, but I want it. It's on my list at least. I just have to read the synopsis again one day. Then we have The Lonely Hearts Hotel by Heather O'Neill, which is a book that I also have forgotten most of. I mean, I don't remember. I remember putting it on the list because I heard about it in a video which made it sound really, really good, but I can't remember too much about it now. This is really bad. But the next one I remember, Lincoln in the Bardo by George Saunders. Now this one I have heard about through videos, and I have been recommended it personally, or not personally, but through one of my videos. People say to me, this is a really good book, you have to read it, Helene. So I think it's a retelling of Lincoln's life, but it's kind of a weird retelling. I remember one person saying that the first part of the book was very confusing, but once you got into it, you just end up loving it. So that's intriguing, I think, and also I like the cover. I have a thing about white covers. Next we have How Green Was My Valley by Richard Llewellyn, which I must admit I had never heard about until a week ago. Then I saw it on Mercedes' channel. She said that it's one of her favorite books. I looked it up and I just had to own it and read it. Oh my god. This book is about nostalgia, and it's about, I think it's about a boy. We follow him, and once again, that's all I remember. But that thing about nostalgia is hit for me. I want to read it, and since it's her favorite book, I do believe that I'm going to like it as well. Last two books. The first one is The Cider House Rules by John Irving. I know exactly why that one is on my list, because I love John Irving and I recently read The World According to God by him and I loved it. So now I'm kind of running out of books to read by him. So the next one I would like to read is The Cider House Rules, which is really famous. I can't believe I haven't read it yet. I haven't even watched the movie. Anyway, and I want to own this specific edition because I own two other of his novels in this edition, and I love for my books to match. Last book on my list is Maud. In Danish you would say Maud. Anyway, a novel inspired by the life of Ellen Montgomery. So Ellen Montgomery wrote the Anne of Green Gables series. Yes, she did. I just had to make sure. Which I wasn't the hugest fan of, but I would still love to read this book because it's a retelling of her life in fictional format. And it sounds really, really intriguing. And that cover, I really love it. I will put the link to the channel I heard about this book, because I think it's called A Life Between Words, and I love her channel, so definitely go check out her channel. She's the one who received a review copy of this novel. She hasn't read it yet, but I'm pretty sure that I'm going to love it, she's going to love it, and then everyone will be happy. And that's it. That was all of the 34 books on my wish list. Now, I'm not going to buy any of these books anytime near, and my list is obviously going to grow in the upcoming months, but that's good because once I run out of books to read on my shelves, I will have a bunch of books to look forward to buying and reading, and these are the books so far. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next video, happy reading.